Europe has just made one of its most dramatic energy decisions in decades. The European Union has officially approved a sweeping plan to eliminate all Russian natural gas imports by the year 2028. It's not just another policy, it's a transformation that will redraw the entire energy map of the continent and deepen Europe's growing dependence on American energy supplies. For Brussels, this is being sold as a strategic victory, a final step toward energy independence. But across Europe, not everyone is celebrating. Many citizens and even some governments worry that this decision will bring higher energy prices, deeper inflation, and a new wave of economic strain that ordinary people will have to pay for. According to the announcement made in Brussels, the EU Council has endorsed a proposal that completely bans the purchase of Russian natural gas, whether it's delivered through pipelines or shipped as liquefied natural gas, known as LNG. The phase-out won't happen overnight. The plan lays out a strict timeline. Starting in 2026, no new gas contracts with Russia will be allowed, and by January 1st, 2028, all existing long-term supply agreements must end. But there's still one more step before this policy becomes law. The European Parliament must give its approval, and interestingly, some members there want to move even faster. In fact, several lawmakers are demanding that the full ban take effect a year earlier, in 2027. Whether that's realistic, though, is another question. Europe is already under immense economic pressure, facing record debt to GDP levels, rising costs from militarization, and growing discontent among member states. What makes this decision even more remarkable is how it's being introduced. Technically, this plan isn't part of the EU's sanctions against Russia. Instead, it's being implemented through the bloc's trade policy framework. That small technical detail changes everything, because it means that member countries can't use their veto power to block the decision. In other words, Brussels has found a legal backdoor to push its energy agenda through without needing full consensus. This shift in process also reveals something deeper: a growing divide inside the European Union itself. For years, unity was the EU's greatest strength, but now we're seeing cracks appear. Countries like Hungary and Slovakia have consistently opposed cutting off Russian gas, warning that it would cause severe economic disruption and lead to massive price hikes for consumers. Yet this new framework allows the EU to move forward without their consent. The new rules rely on a qualified majority vote, which effectively sidelines smaller or dissenting nations. That means if enough powerful states agree, the rest are simply overruled. For Hungary and Slovakia, this isn't just about energy. It's about sovereignty. Both nations have argued that losing access to Russian gas could devastate their industries and put unbearable pressure on households already struggling with the cost of living. But Brussels appears determined to move ahead, even if it means leaving some of its members behind. The message is clear. The EU's political leadership wants a unified front, even if it comes at the cost of internal division. Everyone is expected to align with the new agenda, one that prioritizes military spending, political unity, and energy realignment over social stability. This is the new reality for Europe, a continent trying to redefine itself in the aftermath of geopolitical conflict, while quietly facing the consequences of its own choices. The gas ban may be framed as a victory for independence, but beneath the surface, it exposes just how fractured the European project has become. Europe's energy story is entering a whole new chapter, one that will define its future for generations. For decades, the continent relied on Russian gas to power its homes, heat its cities, and keep its industries running. But that relationship is ending. The European Union has made a historic decision to cut off all Russian natural gas imports within the next few years. A move that will completely transform Europe's energy landscape and perhaps its political balance as well. Not long ago, Russia was Europe's main energy lifeline. Nearly half of all natural gas imported into the European Union came from Moscow. It was affordable, dependable, and deeply integrated into Europe's economy. But when the Ukraine conflict began, everything changed overnight. Europe suddenly found itself caught between energy dependence and political pressure, and it chose to break away. Fast forward to today, and Russian gas accounts for just around 13% of Europe's total imports. That's a dramatic drop in just 2 years. During that time, the EU has banned Russian oil, coal, and refined fuels, and even placed a price cap on Russian crude sold abroad. Yet while those policies hit Moscow's revenue, they also sent shockwaves through Europe itself. Energy prices exploded, the cost of living surged, and consumer confidence across the continent plunged to record lows. In countries like Germany, once the powerhouse of European industry, energy-intensive sectors began shutting down or moving operations overseas. Entire supply chains have been disrupted, and what used to be Europe's industrial strength is now showing cracks. But rather than slowing down, Brussels is pushing even harder. The plan is clear. By 2028, or possibly even 2027, the EU wants to eliminate all Russian gas from its markets. no exceptions. Still, not every country agrees with this approach. Hungary and Slovakia have been the loudest critics from day one. Both nations rely heavily on Russian energy and argue that such a drastic shift could devastate their economies. They've fought to keep importing Russian crude through the old pipeline network, and have repeatedly blocked proposals to sanction Moscow's gas and nuclear industries. Their message is blunt: alternatives aren't ready, and this transition risks punishing ordinary citizens more than it hurts Russia. But this time, the European Commission decided to outmaneuver them. Instead of presenting the new gas ban as a traditional sanction, Brussels redefined it as a trade measure. That clever legal rewording removed Hungary and Slovakia's power to veto the proposal. One senior EU diplomat even told Politico that the bloc would reach an agreement despite their opposition. In the days before the vote, both governments scrambled to push back. Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico warned he would block the EU's next sanctions package unless gas exemptions were added. Hungary's Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó went further, calling the plan a direct assault on Hungary's national interests and its energy security. He warned that cutting off Russian gas would drive up prices, damage the economy, and erase the affordable energy system that Hungarian families depend on. Slovakia shared the same frustration. Prime Minister Fico described the EU's energy plan as ideological nonsense, accusing Brussels of putting political agendas ahead of practical solutions. And it's not hard to understand their anger. The European Commission insists that this policy will strengthen energy security and prevent price spikes. But let's be honest, how can it be called energy security when Europe is now paying 2 or even 3 times what it used to for natural gas? And when the continent's new main supplier isn't local at all, but the United States, selling liquefied natural gas across the Atlantic at premium prices? For Hungary and Slovakia, this new reality is extremely difficult. Both countries have long-term contracts with Russia's Gazprom. Hungary until 2036, Slovakia until 2034. Those deals guaranteed stable supplies for more than a decade. But now, under the EU's plan, they'll be forced to unwind those agreements in just a few short years. An enormous logistical and financial challenge. Meanwhile, the European Parliament and the Council are preparing to begin final negotiations. The debate now focuses on timing. Will the full ban take effect in 2028, or will the EU accelerate the timeline to 2027? Either way, the end result seems certain. Europe is determined to break free from Russian fossil fuels completely, completing one of the most ambitious and risky energy transitions in modern history. For Russia, none of this comes as a surprise. Moscow saw this coming years ago and began preparing early. It's been steadily redirecting its energy exports eastward, toward China, India, and other BRICS partners. Oil and gas that once flowed into Europe are now being shipped to Asia, where demand is surging. Russia is also expanding its liquefied natural gas infrastructure to reach new customers across Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America. So while Europe declares independence from Russian energy, it may simply be redrawing the world's energy map, shifting influence from west to east. The bigger question is whether Europe can actually sustain this transformation. Can it afford the higher costs? Can its industries survive without cheap energy? Or is the continent trading one form of dependence, on Russia, for another, this time on the United States and global LNG markets? For millions of Europeans, these aren't abstract questions. They show up in monthly energy bills, in factory layoffs, and in the rising prices of everyday goods. The promise of a clean, secure, and independent energy future sounds good on paper, but in reality, it's a path filled with economic pain and political division. Still, Brussels believes that in the long run, this sacrifice will pay off. The EU wants to lead the world toward renewable energy and a green transition, powered by wind, solar, and hydrogen instead of oil and gas. It's a bold vision, but until that future arrives, Europe will be walking a tightrope, balancing between principle and practicality, ambition and affordability. If you live in Europe, what's your take? Do you think this decision is the right one? A necessary step toward energy freedom? Or do you feel it's moving too fast, putting politics ahead of people's everyday struggles? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd really love to hear your perspective. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful or insightful, please consider supporting the channel. It helps keep independent analysis alive. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives on global economics, politics, and energy.